Is this? Are we? Oh shoot. G'day, this is Ghost Wolf, and I am standing out in the middle of the ocean because I promised you an underwater base, and I keep my promises. So, here it is, the sun's coming up, you can't really see it all that well. So this was my first base. When I was starting out, I had my heart set on living in a woodland monument. But I couldn't find one, unsurprisingly. What I could find, however, were a lot of ocean monuments. And I'd never been in an ocean monument before. But with peaceful mode, knowing that no Elder Guardians were lurking inside, I decided that if I couldn't have a woodland mansion, then the next best thing was an ocean monument. So I'm just going to take a step down onto this block here, which is going to activate conduit power, and you'll be able to see the whole thing in all of its harshly lit night vision glory. And so there you have the exterior of the underwater base. And over on the side there is my fish farm, which is still incomplete. I need a lot more magma blocks. So why don't we head on over? Now I decided that we should probably start at the top, for two reasons. One, because the underwater base is something of an interest sandwich. It is pretty dull up the top here. It gets a little more interesting a couple of levels down. At the bottom is where the real meat of the build is, and then underneath it goes back to being rather dull. The other reason that I thought we should start up here is because that's where I started when I approached this monument. This glass tube that I'm standing on was originally made of sand, and I filled in this middle part with sand as well, and was able to tunnel down until I reached the roof. So if we step in, I've moved these sea lanterns a little bit, because I wasn't sure how I wanted to get in and out. Now this is the dome on top of each ocean monument, and I've just put glass in between. So this isn't actually a room of the monument, but it was one of the earliest things that I did, was replace the sand with glass, and it was nice to come up here and have a look out at the ocean. Once I had made myself an air tunnel, I broke in through the monument's ceiling into the uppermost room, where you usually find an Elder Guardian. And I haven't done much with this room. I did replace part of the walls and ceiling with glass to again give us a gorgeous view. And I did move the sea lanterns around a bit because there were a lot of them and they weren't evenly spaced. Same with the columns. And a lot of that had to do with I was using ladders to get in and out. And I was trying to find a way to arrange the ladders so that you could just climb up from this room. The monuments are a lot smaller inside than they look from the outside, and so I was actually really restricted in what I was able to do with the build. And I initially had a staircase that ran down here, And in the end, it just took up too much room. And so eventually I decided to go with this primitive water elevator. And you'll see what I mean by primitive when we move down to the next level. But after breaking through the ceiling, I painstakingly filled this room with dirt and sand to replace all of the water blocks, and then continued downwards. And so here we have what I consider to be the upper level of my underwater base. And I've replaced this wall with glass, and I've maintained the original pattern of dark prismarine blocks. And you can see one there where the pattern continues downwards. And that gave a lovely view out over the front of the monument. And so here we have a nice little sitting area, the little table and a couch. Behind that is the crafting and storage area, and this is just a minimalist version because I keep most things over at the Woodland Mansion, though I do have chests for the various kinds of prismarine, and I've stored them here rather than in my mansion. And so I just keep some basics, some gold and some lapis, some iron, some basic furnaces, and a crafting table, because you should always have lots of crafting tables all around the place. If we come across to this corner, we have a little study nook with a chair and a laptop. And the enchanting corner, where this was my first enchanting table. Finally, we have a bedroom area. So we've got a little seat there, a little table with the matching green top, and a chest of drawers. Shout out to FedEx Gaming, who I got this idea for the open drawer from, which looks kind of cool. And this is the bed. And you can see that the bed has some curtains around it. They're very simple curtains, but you want a nice, soothing kind of feel when you're trying to get some sleep. And so that is the upper level, or the living level, I guess. And set in the floor here is the water elevator that will take us down to the ground. So if we step in this side, you can see the bubbles coming up on this side and the bubbles disappearing down this side. So we just want to step in here and we will be very quickly sucked down to the next level. And I've had a lot of practice at that. And so we have our downside, the upside, and you can exit down through there and go underneath the monument. Let's start on this side. We have a large meeting table with a very impressive looking chair. Here, just through that, you'll see there is a small living area with a number of beds, a desk with some computers, there's a microphone, some more beds, they've got some books. Excuse me, Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, will you come down from there, please? Yes, you, Dr. Brown. Please come down. And at the back here, we have our server farm, because the things that we do in this underwater base require considerable computing power. And there is accommodations for what was it, 5 on that side? Yes, 10 scientists at a time. And if we come through here, we see there is a surgery set up, so that's supposed to be our gurney with a rack for the IV bags. And we've got some monitors up here, so these two, they kind of look like they're flatlining, because there's obviously no patients here, and some readouts of heaven knows what. And here, it's probably not actually, you probably can't tell what I was trying to do with that there, but it's meant to be like a fume hood. So in theory, like, this glass panel slides aside and you can work with chemicals in there and so on. If I'd had brewing stands, there would have been various brewing stands and whatnot over here to represent like the chemicals and things that scientists work with. You've got some filing cabinets and another computer. And here is Dr. Purple. How are you doing today, Dr. Purple? Good to see you. And it looks like he is having a check of our smelting system. And this is probably the most controversial project going on in this underwater base, where we are smelting kelp into dried kelp. We have a crafting table right here, so we can turn that kelp into dried kelp blocks, and those go in this chest back here and feed back into the furnaces to smelt more dried kelp. And the reason that this is the most controversial project is because kelp as a fuel is not particularly efficient. Although it is plentiful, and I'll show you the kelp underneath the base in a moment, for every kelp you use to smelt, you get 2 dried kelp. So each kelp is replenishing itself and giving you 1 more, if that makes sense. I'm not good with numbers, so hopefully you understood. Thank you, Dr. Purple. Here we have our aquarium, and when I set up this underwater base, I didn't have silk touch and I didn't even have an iron pickaxe, and so I couldn't remove these gold blocks. And what I decided was, instead of harvesting them, I would make a feature of them. And so I put these glass walls all around, filled it up with water, and I even got some soul sand in there to make bubbles. And once I did have silk touch, I was able to get all this lovely coral that gives it that beautiful splash of colour. I did initially have the aquarium filled with fish, and that is what this is for. If we go up here, you can jump in the water and swim around in here. Unfortunately, fish despawn on the PS4. I'm not sure about the other consoles, but none of my fish remained for very long. And so here we have another glass feature wall, although it is now nighttime outside, so there's not much to see. And you may recognize this from the beginning, but this is my fancy throne with real working chair. So if we click this, we can sit in the chair and we can look at this massive wall of monitors with a little webcam there up top so that we can record ourselves. And here we have the enclosed lab. I've used black stained glass here to give it a sort of tinted effect. If we go in here, this is Dr. White. How are you today? What are you working on? Anything interesting? The containment cell appears to be empty today. So I'm guessing we don't have any new subjects at the moment. But we have some drawers for equipment. There's a computer and another microphone here. And the theme of these arched doors with the iron set in there actually started over here with this door, where I put an iron door in. Good work. Where I put an iron door in because there was a nether portal here. And this nether portal is huge because it had to be at least 2 blocks wide, and the only way to make it sit symmetrically in this room was to go out another block. Or I suppose I could have put it in sideways, though I think that would have been less impressive. And so we've got some sea lanterns set into the ceiling to provide light, and this is probably a massive waste of space really, but the inner dimensions of the monument are very, very limiting. There's not a lot you can do with this space, so let's check out the specimen cages. So here we have Experiment A, the Jeb sheep, and you can't see the name tag through the glass, but as you can see, this sheep is slowly fading through the 16 available colours of wool. In the next cell, we have Experiment B, the Dinnerbone horse. And as you can see, this horse is upside down. In case you're wondering, I did try taking that layer of grass out, but the horse's head still clips through the ground at whatever height that's at. So having the grass in there made the horse easier to see, and having the cell 2 blocks high versus 3 blocks wasn't making a difference anyway. Experiment C is the toast rabbit, and oh, it's hiding right down the back. You can't really see it. Come on, Toast. Come on, Toast. And as a tribute to a player's girlfriend whose rabbit had recently passed away, naming a rabbit Toast will give it a unique skin. And here we have Specimen A wild-caught pink sheep. full disclosure, this isn't the actual wild pink sheep that I saw. I just grabbed a random sheep and dyed it. But let's just all pretend that this is, in fact, a wild specimen of sheep that is being subjected to genetic studies. Finally, we have the character from the teaser, Subject A, Dr. Grum. And you can see here he has a nice little desk with a computer, there's a chair up the back, but everything is upside down. Where are you today, Dr. Grum? Here he is in his bedroom, and he's got a little table and a bookshelf and a nice simple bed like the others. And he, like Dinnerbone, is also upside down. Perhaps the result of a failed experiment. Dr. Grum? Did you fake your credentials? Is this the result? And tucked into the corner here, just through this very narrow and unassuming doorway, is the minecart station, which connects to the Great Sky Rail. And if you've seen my episode on the Great Sky Rail, you will notice that this looks extremely different to how it did in that video. And that's because when I made that video, the interior of the Ocean Monument was still mostly just a hollowed out shell that I hadn't really done anything with yet. So these squid, so you can see that squid in the distance just bobbing up and down. That one's actually glitched and has probably since despawned. In here we have two chests. This chest contains items that I need to take elsewhere, and this chest underneath the clock contains all of my treasure maps. And on the topic of maps, we have our final feature, the map wall, which I think is coming along nicely. And the map wall was a nightmare to put in. The Ocean Monument consists of 3 levels that are 3 blocks high. And you can see this is us here in the middle of the ocean. I also found one here in the middle of this ocean that I'm thinking I might do something with as well. But it was very difficult to find somewhere to place a 5-block high map wall. And so in the end I put it here and decided that was close enough and that I wasn't going to mess around with it anymore. And this is our these are treasure maps where I have found the associated treasure chest, and all 5 of them contained a heart of the ocean. I've been able to make 3 conduits. One of those conduits is underneath, and if you stand here you can hear the heart of the sea beating. So let's head underneath the monument to take a look at it. And this is the kelp forest that I planted underneath here. And this is the conduit. When I built the conduit, I didn't want it touching the underside of the monument or the ground below. I wanted it to float there in the middle of the water, just as the actual conduit item itself does in the middle of this structure. and I hope you have enjoyed this little tour through the Mad Scientist lab that is my underwater base. And until next time, cheers!